I talked about what was going on in France this week about Macron being reelected and how bogus that is and how it's not getting national news. And it's important to note because you could expect that in America too. The people that they're putting in these positions of power are not going anywhere. They've already seen that there'll be rumblings upon the citizens about whether the election's rigged, were they not. When in reality, like I've been saying for years, the elections aren't rigged. They're fake. They don't actually exist. The whole rigged debate, the reason they're revealing it is because all it does is just cause more conflict among citizens and who votes for who. Instead of saying, wow, this whole thing's a fraud, it's all a scam, we should all band together and go after these people and take them out of these positions and run them into the streets, which is what should occur but will not occur. It only took 2 days after Macron was somehow reelected. Remember in France, the chaos that was ensuing during the outbreak, the restrictions, the lockdowns, the quarantines, the civil unrest, where it looked like there would be no chance in the world, kind of like here in America with Biden, there would be no chance in the world that this guy would still be in power. But of course, he somehow wins and nobody makes a big deal about it because, well, if the media doesn't make a big deal about it, the zombies don't react. So they just assume that he was reelected, even though there's no chance that anybody would have voted for this fraud. This guy, you just look at him and you know he's a scumbag. But it's the same with all these politicians. So it only took 2 days after him being put back in a position of power to roll out the digital ID. That's right, roll out the digital ID. Now, people will say, hey, you know, here in America, the liberals are going to calm down with the restrictions on the 1/9er and stuff because elections are coming up. They do that to keep the illusion of elections being real. So they go, oh, yeah, you know, oh, and then they put their foot back in the pedal and they go, well, that's typical liberals because now that they got their positions of power back, now they're going to take more control because, you know, they had to ease up so they can get the votes from people. You know, people buy into this nonsense when in fact, this is the plan all along, but they want to make sure people still believe that these are all republics and these are all, you know, democracies and people are having power to elect these people when they don't. So Macron is facing backlash already as he launched the digital ID 2 days after being reelected. I mean, they confirmed, Prime Minister Jean Castex confirmed on April 26th, a mere 2 days after the president was reelected, the creation of a so-called Digital Identity Guarantee Service, SGIN. It will allow French people to have a digital ID card in compliance with the EU Commissioner's European Digital Identity Package. The move sparked the fury of Les Patriots leader Florian Philippot, who called on French voters to fight against the new legislation. He said just after the election, the government announces the launch of the digital ID. The goal to put social credit in the Chinese way, control and surveillance company. Let's totally reject this application and fight by any means. People can fight all they want. This is biblical. This is coming. And the digital ID has to do with the mark, if you're not aware. But it's not going to be a digital card, and it's not going to be something you scan on your phone. It's going to be inside your body permanently. It's going to be your identity. It's going to be you. Now, as that story is out there, we have Newsweek coming out with an article as well this week talking about why the digital identity is even more important in the metaverse. So for those of you that don't understand, I think the digital ID is like just having a license and or like a social security number. Understand that your digital identity is going to be in you.
As an individual, you identify yourself in many ways: your name, address, age, profession, and more. You see that identity in many forms: on your driver's license, social security card, birth certificate, work or school badges, insurance cards. These are called identity instruments. Now, think of all the ways you identify yourself with all your different forms of ID, multiplied by all your daily online and offline interactions. Just how much of your personal identifiable information do you control? How much of it is out there, being used without your consent? And how much of it is stored in locations you don't know about? As you think about where your identity is and who has access to it, hackers are constantly prowling honeypots to exploit personal information aggregated into centralized systems of records. Identity theft and data breaches are major threats that compromise who we are, because identity is the fundamental asset of how we interact with each other, and having our identity compromised or stolen creates a tremendous setback for ourselves. So let's rethink how identity solutions transform the way we interact with the world. ID issuing, Secure payments, universal patient records, know your customer, and more are all use cases of digital identity that can be embedded in modernized transactions. So, what are the two major drivers for change? First, we all want control over our identity and who we share it with through secure relationships, removing any identity mediators. Second, businesses want to optimize process workflows and decrease costs while remaining relevant in a digital economy. These same businesses also want to innovate on their core strategy. Instead of having to invest in an identity strategy, evolving identity models can offload some of those challenges, which can then be reinvested in building core business value for clients. The end result? Moving control points for identity to the edges of the network, giving more control to people, organizations, and connected devices, where trust cannot be compromised. Blockchain technology accelerates decentralized identity models by providing a web of trust as people, organizations, and connected devices establish and share their own identity created by them and verified by relationships. Let's solve digital identity management together.
It's going to be a mark inside of you. It's going to be your blockchain inside of your digital DNA. So a user-controlled digital ID could become a prerequisite to assessing metaverse goods and services. What a surprise. You won't be able to buy or sell in the metaverse, which is where they're pushing everyone to be and live as they destroy everything here and blame it on global warming and push everybody inside of a virtual reality, virtual realm, virtual hell. You will need this to be a part of it. They say Web3 and the metaverse are here to stay. To prepare for safe metaverse participation, though, internet users need to begin assimilating into this new digital space, and obtaining a digital ID is one of the first steps. In fact, showing a user-controlled digital ID could become a prerequisite to accessing metaverse goods and services in order to protect businesses and consumers from fraud or bad behavior. So, obviously, we all are aware that they're pushing all this stuff with hacking. They're pushing all this stuff with making people fearful of their identities being stolen, cyber attacks, all this nonsense. It's been going on for years. Your money disappearing in your bank account. These are all threats and intimidation tactics they're going to use to get people to get the digital ID, as well as not being able to participate in society, not being able to buy or sell, as we know that this all ties in with the mark. A digital ID is an electronic certificate providing identity and eligibility, sometimes issued by a CA, a certification authority. Digital IDs link an organization or individual's identity with their public key. This is the blockchain, a number value used to encrypt sensitive information. Digital IDs can include the following types of personal identifiable information: age, name, issuing state, digital signature, location, digital ID serial number, public key value, and expiration date. And of course, this will have your status as well as if you had the magic potion or not, because that is going to be a prerequisite as well with all of this. Because again, they need to get that nano, right? I can't go into it any further. But what if you already have a government issued ID? It says, is a blockchain version of a driver's license truly necessary? People need an ID to enter clubs or travel, and the metaverse will likely eventually require ID for digital versions of these activities. And it's amazing that people don't realize what they're doing here. And they think that the metaverse is just some type of video game and people are just going to play it and have a choice. Not when they destroy everything over here on the outside and blame it on climate change so we can all fight amongst each other more. Oh, the Republicans didn't. They're destroying the atmosphere on their own. It's nothing to do with the climate. Look at the planes flying above, leaving those fart winds in the sky that they call clouds, which are chem clouds. It's unbelievable. I can't even believe we've gotten to this point with stupidity, that people haven't risen up against this. But it says people will need an ID to enter clubs or travel, and the metaverse will likely eventually require ID for digital versions of these activities. As in the physical world, certified identification is essential for consumer and business protection in the metaverse. Web3 and metaverse leaders should concentrate on building a secure infrastructure, and digital IDs are an important component of this new connected world. Okay? It's not going to be able to occur without a digital ID. But you're also seeing the digital ID being pushed out into the real world. These politicians who are now placed in positions of power, it's not like we haven't heard the World Economic Forum talking about digital ID, talking about implanting chips in people's brains and how in 10 years we're all going to have it. We've all heard, and I played the clips over and over on all my channels, including obviously many of the deleted ones, because those are the videos they don't want you to see, talking about what their overall plan is by 2030. Okay? Digital ID is on that list. We see Canada doing it. We see France now doing it. There's other countries that are doing it. There are states in America that are rolling it out. I talked about Arizona. I've shown, just how unbelievable is Apple with Apple producing their digital ID, right? So this will be prerequisite. This will be protocol for living and being a part of society, which obviously this is linked. There's multiple things linked to it. You won't be able to have this without obviously having a potion, but you also will not be able to have this without having this inside of you eventually. It might start on the outside. It might start on your phone. So people get used to what it is because they have to make sure everyone is used to it and comfortable. And they're like, oh, yeah, and then suddenly it's scanned inside of you. And they go, oh, it's nothing. Don't worry about it. Get people more used to getting pricked all the time by these pricks in their arms. They'll be used to it and they'll be fine with, something going in them. That's part of also what this massive, massive operation is that's going on right now. So this is Newsweek talking about it at the same time that we have France rolling it out, right? Only took 2 days for this clown. I mean, this is one of those guys like Trudeau. You look at him and man, your blood just boils. These you just see these weakling puppets. What these guys, you could just look at them and you could just look in their eyes and know what they're doing behind closed doors and how disturbed these people are and how obsessed they are with control. They are obsessed with control. They want to know everything you're thinking and everything you're doing at all times. Why? Because they're fearful of the people coming after them. Because if people realize what they're doing, and why do you think this free speech stuff is becoming so dangerous to them? Okay, it's not about votes in an election like the Fox News media will try to make you think, oh, they're afraid because people are going to expose the laptop and all this crap. It's because if people knew what they were doing with children, that these people were Satanists, that's what it's about, total control, then it would be, then the game would be over. But that's the stuff they don't want you to know. They don't care about people buying into the left, right? They want you buying into the left, right. So the digital ID is going to be rolled out all around the world. All the countries are going to be rolling it out. Is it going to be hard for them to implement it at first? But guess what? When Facebook first came out, people weren't lining up to sign up for it. They were making fun of it. Now, if you don't have Facebook, you're weird, right? People feel like, oh, Facebook, what's wrong with you? Oh, you don't have Instagram? What's wrong with you? Oh, you don't have a cell phone? What's wrong with you? Right? Because they have to get people used to it. They desensitize people to the technology. They get people used to the technology. And eventually, they get the technology inside of people's bodies. So this is important that this is going on in France because this just shows you they just put the guy back in power. And this is the first deed that he needs to do the second that he's fakely reelected. But in reality, he was selected and placed there on purpose, just like we're seeing all around the world because they have control, full control of all the governments of the world. And all these puppets are doing what they're supposed to do. Putin's doing it. Zelensky's doing all of them. They're all working together. It is an attack on the citizens. That's what this is that you're seeing on a mass scale. But they need to point a finger at the boogeyman so that they have a reason to say, oh, well, this is why it's happening. And everyone goes, oh, okay. And they accept it. They would never think for 1 second that the governments of the world were doing this to their own citizens for control over their own citizens. Even though we see it going on in China and nobody blinks. They're like, that would never happen in America. You see what's happening right now in America? And people still are like, no, that's because hate speech. How do you think they're going to get people to, to a communist state? They have to eliminate things. Hate speech is just a made up, ridiculous cupcake type of just mind control tactic that they use on people that people just go, oh, it's hate speech if they disagree with it, or it's racist if it's all nonsense. And everyone's just doing it to each other, canceling each other out. And that's what they want so that they can gain control and tell us what's best for us. And all these soft people that they've created by creating, anti-bullying campaigns and all this stuff are all the problem. And they're the reason that this is going to get pushed forward. But people like me, it's not getting pushed on us. That's for sure. They're going to have to come to our door, and they know what they're going to have to do because they're well aware of people like me and you who are not going to comply with this garbage. So the digital ID rolled out in France after a fake election. Not national news, of course, because, well, the only thing that they want on national news is trying to figure out what a woman is because they want to make the most obscene, absurd things the main topic. So they literally are trying to drive people crazy, and it's working because we see people are going nuts. Like, can you believe they're talking about this? I can't believe it personally either, but I know what they're trying to do. They're distracting everyone, and we're arguing over the most insane crap, and they're empowering the insane people. So is it done on purpose? You bet your rear end it is.